Good evening, everyone. As you're logging on, it is 6:30, and we are so grateful to have you here tonight. We'll let everyone get comfortable, and we'll do a little bit of housekeeping as everyone's logging on. So we are in webinar mode. That means that your video is off, your mics are muted. Feel free to be comfortable. No one's gonna see you snacking, okay? You're all good. What we'll do tonight is, if you want to ask questions, please use the Q&A feature. You'll see that little symbol along the bottom of your toolbar there. If you want to chat, if you want to introduce yourself or share a comment, please use the chat for that. But if you have a specific question, use that Q&A feature, because that helps us keep track of it, because we want to help you get your questions answered. This webinar is being recorded. It will be available. Everyone who registered will receive an email from me, hopefully tomorrow or this weekend, and it will have all the handouts. It'll have the link to the recording. In that handout drive will be your certificate of attendance and all resources from the event. If you need closed captioning, you'll see that toolbar is available, or that feature is available in the toolbar as well. Tonight, this is really important, everyone. Your input is so important to me. It helps drive, what the Family Resource Center does. It helps me know if, these trainings are meeting your needs. Please, when you log off tonight, it should automatically pop up. If it doesn't, for some reason, I will include a link tomorrow in the email as well. But please, if you could just take a moment. It is very short, just a few questions, but it really is very important to me. And a quick reminder, this presentation is for informational purposes only. It is not legal advice. Introductions. So I'm so grateful. I have to tell you that this is one of my favorite webinars every year, and parent trainings, because as a parent, I remember how difficult this was, and just it's a big transition. So I'm so grateful that we have Kelly Greiner here with us tonight. Hi, Kelly. She's from Clovis Community College, and she is the DSPS director. We have Shannon Jorgensen with us. She's a teacher with Clovis Unified and the workability supervisor. She does the TPT program. And so thank you, Shannon and Kelly, for being here with us tonight. And I'm, of course, Leanne. I run the Family Resource Center. And, well, there's my phone number and email if you need anything. So let's talk just a minute about what our outcomes are tonight. I really appreciate this visual that Shannon created, because it references it when you're going through your handouts later, because it's color coded. Okay, so I need visuals myself. It helps me understand all this information you're going to get. And so keep that in mind as we go along, that we're going to go by topic. And so one of the first things we'll talk about is the ITP. And then again, we'll move along across the board. One of the things that can be really hard for families to understand is the difference between what we call diploma track or non-diploma track, what the options are after high school, and what that all looks like. And so there again, I'm so grateful that we have two experts in the field on what that looks like after high school. So with that, we're going to kick it off and turn it over to Shannon. And here we go. Thank you. Shannon, we can't hear you.
There you go. Is that better?
There you go. All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you, Leanne. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is what is an individual transition plan, and this is often referred to as ITP. So under federal law, transition planning for students with an IEP must start at the time a student turns 16. So it happens during the 15th year when they're having their IEP. And it's based on students' needs, preferences, and interests, and reflects the student's own goals. Transition planning and ITP development are such an important part of the IEP process. Individuals with Disability Act added a transition component with a purpose to prepare our students with disabilities for adulthood and life after high school. The transition is identified as a priority for students with disabilities. So this is a really important part of the IEP. The Office of Special Education Programs is dedicated to improving results for infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities all the way through 21 by providing financial support, leadership to assist with students. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act is a law that helps job seekers find employment, training, and support services. It also helps businesses and skilled workers. Next one, thank you. So when do we develop an ITP as an IEP team? Well, there's a couple different ways. Typically, it's during an IEP. Okay, but sometimes they might have an ITP meeting if the student turns 15 or is going to turn 16 before the IEP happens, something like that, they will hold a meeting just for that ITP or could occur at a separate meeting. What are the legal requirements of ITP? One of the main things is age appropriate assessments. This could be informal assessments or formal. And what this does is captures what the student wants for their life, education, employment, training, and if applicable, independent living. And we're going to go into showing what that looks like in the IEP in a little bit. The plan must document how academic courses, curriculum, and vocational activities help to promote movement for the student toward their future goals post-school. For IEP team, is also for the IEP team to facilitate outside agencies as well to link them if it is applicable for each individual student. So picture here, this is what an actual ITP looks like in your IEP. It's typically the second and third page of the IEP. All right. So you can see, like, I'm not going to go into detail on this, but at the top, you have your post-secondary goals, number 1. So you're going to have 3 different goals that your student's going to be working on: education and training, employment, and if applicable, independent living. All right. This has to be updated annually. All right. So at every IEP, this should not look the same at every IEP. This should be updated. You should have new assessments and new activities that go along with each goal. Okay. They need to be age appropriate assessments too. All right. So they should be doing age appropriate assessments with the case manager. Transition services is number 4, and each goal will have a transition service attached to it. So this will have actual minutes attached on the service page. I'm not going to go into detail and confuse you guys even more because that's a lot of information, but there are services sometimes that is attached to that. So that could be like, it could be a service that has to do with if they're deaf and hard of hearing, they might need their a service from that, or it might be a mentoring service or transition service. It varies depending upon the goal. Annual goals are directly related to post-secondary goals. So this will be part of their goals in their main goals. And the student invited to the IEP and how they participate is very important. That's the number 6 at the top. So we always encourage students at every age to be part of their IEP and part of their ITP, because this really is the part where the student really shines and talks about themselves and really researches what do they want. Start getting them thinking about their future. What do they want to do when they graduate from high school or when they go on to the next program? It's really important for them to be part of this. Also, this is a part, number 7, it talks about representation of agency that provides post-secondary transition support. We encourage those agencies to be invited. So that would be like if you are a CVRC client, we would encourage you to invite your CVRC case manager. If you're with the Department of Rehab, then any kind of agency that your student is receiving services outside of the district, feel free to have them join the IEP and be part of it. More participants help to make it a much more well-rounded IEP altogether. We can go on to the next one.
Real quick, Shannon, I think one of the important things too, and why this can be so confusing is because when we talk about, a student with a disability and an IEP, wow, is that a range, right? I'm,
Yes,
and even with the same disability, two students are completely unique, right?
exactly.
In their desires, in their what their strengths are, but it really, when we talk about this ITP, and I loved how you talked about it being, updated each year because our kiddos do change so much, right?
Right.
But you know, what an ITP looks like for one kiddo that maybe they're visually impaired, but
Mhm.
cognitively, on track, right? Or
Right.
maybe they have, cognitive impairments, and that affects, that is what their disability is. Maybe they have a mobility issue. Just a blanket statement of a disability, like I said, it's such
Mhm.
a broad term. And so it really is so important to, that families think about this ahead of time, which is why
Absolutely.
I just again appreciate you both being here.
Thank you for that. Yes, absolutely. This is just kind of a diagram that shows the process of a ITP. And it all starts off with assessment and data collection. And that is where we review existing evaluations and assessments from the student's IEP. And then the teacher might need to conduct additional assessments to gather information about the student's strengths, their needs, their interests, and most importantly, their post-school goals in areas, once again, education, employment, independent living, and how those are related with community participation. That's a huge part too. We involve the students, parents, teachers, and other relevant professionals in the assessment process. And then the next thing is taking all that information and now creating goals. Okay, we need to create goals from all this information. So they develop the goals and they make sure that it is attainable, relevant, and also able to be completed in a timely manner. This is a year map, okay? So I always talk about when I do the IEPs, I used to say an ITP is like a map for the next year and then also for when after they graduate. All right. So you have your main goal in education and it says, maybe I want to go to a community college. Well, every year, what are you going to do? What are the activities you're going to do to help you get to a community college? All right. So those are going to be changing. Those should be changing every year because they should be doing them every year. And there should be new ones that help them attain that goal. All right. Employment would be, I might want to get a part-time job. Okay, well, what are we doing to get a part-time job? All right, what are those activities? What are the services too? We have to have a service identification. What do they need help with? Do they need assistance from any services? So that's another thing as part of it. And then we want to develop a plan. You want to document the student's transitions goals and necessary services, and then make a time for implementation to make sure that they are able to attain those goals. So this shows just some activities that can support your students' preferences and are activities that can be completed at school. So for example, let's say your student loves being outdoors, okay? They just love being outside, and some possible activities might be gardening, okay? A possible work site could be, so this would be something like they say, I like to, be outside and I like to be with plants. So a possible work site for their employment goal and their transition, their ITP, would be possibly working at a nursery, all right? A possible recreation or leisure skill could be to visit a nursery or interview a CUSD ground employee, okay? Let's say your student enjoys pushing things around. All right. Some activities might include shopping or cleaning. A possible work site could be at a grocery store, and a possible recreation leisure could be going to the mall or gym. So these could be activities in the classroom and then also the community. So those are all, it looks different for every single student. There's not going to be two IETPs that look alike, and they shouldn't be. They should be individual for each student. So this is, I get this question all the time. How can I help? What can I do to prepare my student for this? So what I like to always say is, think about is your student going to be when they're 40 years old? I know that in IEPs, parents are always thinking about right now in graduation, and, that's just, they can't even think past that. But I taught in a 18 to 22, I taught the adult transition program for 17 years at Clovis Unified. And so my whole thing was, let's look at further down the road. So let's close our eyes and think, what is my student going to look like at 40 years old? Are they going to be living on their own? Are they going to be in a supported environment? Are they going to be working? Are you going to be able to support them, or do you need help to support them? These are all questions that need to be start thinking about now, because this is how we prepare our students and also prepare the families for the transition. And then also, what do you hope for your student, I mean, your son or daughter at the age of 40? As much independence as possible is most of our goal, is we want our students to be as independent as possible. And also to make life-changing transitions while they have your support, okay? So, when your students getting older, we need to start thinking, okay, where am I going to be when they're 40? And who's going to be taking care of them if they're not able to be taking care of themselves? And so this is a transition that's really important to help them transition together, so they're not having to do that transition on their own. Okay. It's easier for your students to handle moving away from home when they still have your support through the transition versus something happening and they're by themselves and having to do the transition on their own. So I always say, really, support your students in the independence and don't be so scared of it. Embrace it. It's exciting and it's good for you and for the student. What can you do to get them there? Encourage your student to engage in activities that encourage independence. For instance, encourage them to work. If they're not at a working age yet, you can create jobs at home. You can have them start trying to get places on their own. There's Handywrite and Roundup. I'm not going to go into detail about this, but those are two transportation programs that help students with disabilities get around the community independently. They're wonderful. I've signed hundreds and hundreds of students with this, and it has opened a door to independence like you would not believe. And then also just, making sure that they're taking on responsibilities everywhere, home and school.
I don't know what happened there. Let me.
You got this, Leanne.
I know. Oh, here we go. Somehow it decided it was going to do it bullet point by bullet point. But yes, this is preparing ahead of time for the IETP of, who do you want there? I think you touched on that, Shannon,
Yeah, I
about
thought it accidentally went away, so I just skipped it.
it's okay. No,
I
yeah.
didn't want to confuse. Okay, so I'll go through that right now. So preparing ahead of time, who do you want at the IATP? We talked about that a little bit. Definitely an advocate, parent, guardian, outside agencies, anyone that has anything to do with your student's future and knows your student can be part of. You can invite anyone you want to the IEP and ITP.
Shannon, do families have to initiate that, or does the school team initiate that? How does that work?
This goes back and forth. The family needs to initiate it for the outside agencies. I know that when I was dealing with my adult students, because they're adults, I would ask them, who do you want? Do you want your CVRC case manager? Do you want your parent? Who do you want there? But when they are underage, the parent needs to to start that. Yes,
Initiate that. Okay.
initiate that.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we said that. What support might your unique student need to actively participate in their IEP? Kind of talked about that from the
Right.
parents.
Well, and I think that's where we go back to what is your child's maybe they're nonverbal, right?
Right.
Again, we have kiddos across the district that range from everything from just a speech delay, right, to
Mm-hmm.
severely disabled, medically fragile children, and
Absolutely.
everything in between, right?
Yep.
And so I I always encourage families, think about, as we're talking about promoting that self-advocacy, and as we're talking about thinking of strength-based, views of our children, and so if they're not verbal, how do they communicate though? You
And
know,
there's a lot of ways that you can do that. We've had students that are unable to attend an IEP meeting. However, we have done videos ahead of time where it shows them actively participating in the process of developing an IEP, or shows their present levels and what they're doing in that way. I've had students just come for a portion of the IEP because they can't, that maybe their attention, they're not able to stay for the whole hour. So they will just come for the beginning and talk about themselves, or they'll create a paper or a picture or poster that shows what they like. And then all the way to the other extreme where I've had students completely lead their own IEP and I hardly say anything. And that's amazing too.
Wow.
So, and everything in between. So it really is depending on the student and how much they're able to participate, but there is always a way they can participate. There shouldn't be a way, I mean, they can be part of it somehow.
Sure. Right, because they all have preferences, and again,
Absolutely.
strengths, and so I love that. Thank you. So we'll keep going. Here we go. And
And then I kind of just said that,
Mhm.
help them create a one-page profile of their strengths, challenges, preferences, or share at the meeting. I've done this. I enjoy doing making a PowerPoint presentation with my students and having them, we prepare it ahead of time before the IEP, and then they get to see it, and we're going to show an example of that later on, but it is just so neat to see how excited they kind of feel like they're the star for the night, or the afternoon. It's really exciting to see them be part of that and embrace and understand what their IEP is.
Sure. And Kelly, do you, at the college level, um, do you ever have I say kiddos, I need to stop that. Young adults, right? Young students. Do you ever have them come in when they meet with you all and have their one-page profile? Is that
Um,
helpful coming to the SPS, or?
That would be really helpful. I find that when the students come to our office, oftentimes they're coming for the first time and it's very overwhelming, right? They're meeting
Mhm.
the counselor at the intake, and then because college is more of like a student-driven process, they might not come back to our office very often. So we give them this much information on the first day, and they can forget to tell us little things about themselves, like that I
Sure.
don't really like math, so maybe I don't want to take math my very first semester here, or like about the jobs that they like or the hobbies that they have. Those things kind of fly out the window when you get nervous.
Right.
And so, yeah, that one pager can make a student feel more confident and also give the counselor more personal information about them.
Absolutely. Just as that's why I always encourage families, to prepare themselves for IEP meetings, to be jotting down their questions and,
Yeah.
concerns ahead of time, because I know full well you get in that meeting and your mind can just completely go blank. And all these things I've thought about for 2 weeks ahead of time, all of a sudden I can't remember my phone number. And so you're right, that equips our student to be able to have that all about me, right? Even at the college level. We have a question I want to go back to real
I was
quick.
just going to say the same thing.
Yes. So Ryan, um, the IEP and the ITP are not the same thing. The ITP is a component of the IEP. Okay, so it's a portion, and I thought we had a slide on that that
We
talked about,
we just went over, are you talking about what it looks like?
no, when it has to be implemented by. So
Yes,
it
it
has,
has to be implemented by their 15th year.
yes,
And the school is the one that initiates it. By law, they have to. So it will be initiated by the school. You do not have to worry about, oh, do I need to tell the teacher? No, they will be taking care of that.
right. And age 15, yes, but by the 16th birthday.
Mhm, mhm,
So, and
mhm.
ladies, I see a couple of you wanted the presentation. It is in the drive. I just reposted that link in the chat. And so all the presentation and all the handouts are in there. And if you don't get it tonight, again, you'll get that in an email later in case you missed the housekeeping at the beginning. Okay, I promise you'll get an email from me with all the resources from tonight. Okay, well, let's keep going. So now we're going to turn it over to Kelly to talk about age of majority. So before now, we were still in the IEP, right? So this could change. Some kiddos turn 18 while they're still in high school. Others don't turn 18 until after. So I just thought I'd give that little disclaimer. So take that with a grain of salt as we're talking about age majority. So there you go, Kelly.
All right, so we are going to talk about the time period between when your child, who is always your child, becomes not only your child, but an adult. So the age of majority, that phrase is both this time period and this experience that everyone has when they become an adult, and it is a checkbox on the IEP. So it's both a concept and a real thing on paper. So in California and in the United States, you become a legal adult at the age of 18 years old. And becoming a legal adult applies to all people, regardless of if they have a disability. So even if your child is going to remain in your care for maybe long periods of time, like when they're 40, they still become an adult at the age of 18. And so for many children, this is a time when there's a transfer of rights from the parent to the child who is now an adult. And specifically today, we're going to talk a lot about their responsibilities and their rights as a student and how that becomes their own responsibility that they can choose to share with you and that you should empower them to take the lead in. And so not only are we talking about their educational rights, but at the age of 18, when your child becomes a legal adult, they also become responsible for their educational, medical, financial, and legal records and decisions. So there are exceptions to this. Of course, there's exceptions to every rule, and those are going to be conservatorships. All right. And then one other thing I want to mention is that if your child is experiencing incarceration, then they also do experience the age of majority. All right. Now, so what happens during this period of age majority? The student becomes eligible to take charge of their own educational records. So if you try to request the student's educational records and they're over the age of 18, you'll be denied their records. And so that's something in college to keep in mind, that typically without, we call it a FERPA release here. So if free education, appropriate education. And so unless we have a release of FERPA, a release of confidentiality, if you call and you ask for a copy of your students' accommodations or their schedule or a printout of their teachers, we're not going to be able to provide you with that information in college. And then so adult.
Kelly? Oh, I'm sorry
Yes.
to interrupt. I just want to clarify too. Again, if your student turns 18 and they're still in high school, that applies there as well, right? That once they turn 18, they're a legal adult. So
Right.
I just wanted to clarify that.
I think like a good example of that is that your child gains the ability to like sign themselves out of school, or excuse their own absences, or receive phone calls on the behalf of the school or from the school. So they can take on that direct ownership, I think is a good example of what kind of happens during that time. Or even final IEP season. You may not be contacted for your child's final IEP if they've been over the age of 18 and they've taken on some responsibility of these records. So it's really important that before your child turns 18, right, we're having IEP every single year. So when your child is 15, 16, and 17, you need to have a discussion about what will happen at that time. Is your child going to be capable of taking responsibility for their records, right? Are they capable of leading their IEP? Are they going to become, like, what's the trajectory there that we're thinking 40 years ahead, right? Your student will also be responsible possibly for insurance or eligible for insurance that is separate from your own. We also want to keep in mind the age of 26 when your child may be responsible for a different type of health insurance than you. Students will possibly be responsible for their financial records will be private. And so we also in college want to think about FAFSA. We use that term a lot, FASFA. That's your financial aid application. So the student will be responsible for filling out their FAFSA, and it's on the computer, and so it may be difficult for you to access that information if you're not like all sitting in the room together. So they might need access to your tax information, but they have to log into this portal and it's assigned to them. So that's one thing you want to be attentive to if you're planning to enroll in college and need financial aid. There's a lot of support to complete that information while you're still in your last year of high school or at the age of 18. Your student is going to be eligible to register to vote, and in community college, we offer voter registration as part of our process. So if that's something your student is interested in, they'll be provided with that opportunity during the intake process for the community college system. And your student may have to register for the military, enlist in the military. One thing we do want to know is that in California, when a minor turns the age of 12, they may have access or the ability to I want to read this correctly. They can legally consent to certain medical treatments or counseling related to drugs, alcohol, and sex health, meaning that parents may have limited access to their child's medical records without their consent from the age of 12. So when you think about things like birth control or condoms or what other kinds of things, seeing mental health counseling, like if your child is enrolling at our college, we offer mental health counseling, and you would not be necessarily privy to those records.
Right. And just to touch on that a minute too, the many families are surprised at, per California law, it's surprising enough that at age 18, even though, we as mom and dad are still paying for their insurance, you cannot access like the billing anymore. So let's say you have a question, oh, I got this dental, this billing, and I want to call the office and talk to them about it. You don't have access to that anymore because they're over the age of 18. Now, what I want the disclaimer though is, of course, they are able, most medical professionals have a waiver that
Brilliant.
children can sign and consent to letting you still be a part. But I just, it's important information for families to realize that some of those changes do take place as early as age 12. That, that you just don't have access to that anymore. And that's not the doctor's fault. That's not the, public school's fault. That's California law. So there you go.
All right, I'll take the next slide.
Okay. Oh, and Yes, I put a handout, California minor consent, that is in the drive if you have more questions about it.
Could you tab through, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times will give me all the tabs. Yes, perfect. Okay, so what are the most important details? We give you all of this information, but there are most important parts. So we want you to, most importantly, encourage your student to advocate for themselves, right? Involve your student in the least restrictive environment for them. Encourage your student to step up and take control if they're capable of that. And that it is both a period of life and a checkbox on the IEP. So when you go through your IEP, you're going to be read your procedural safeguards, like your student's right to FAPE, your students' rights to participate in decision making, as well as your rights to participate, written notice of IEP planning and assessment, that you will be asked for your consent throughout the process, that your student will be eligible for independent evaluation. Like we said, age appropriate evaluation, right? We want to make sure that we're evaluating them at a level that is appropriate for someone that's going to be leaving school and going into the world. And also that you have a right to due process. And just like you have a right to due process in K through 12, you have a right to a similar process in college that is called grievance procedure. All right, and that automatically your students' rights and their information is going to transfer to them when they turn 18. So there's not a form that they have to fill out and send to the governor's office or register with the mayor. They're not filling anything out at school for that. When they turn 18, that information will be directed to them, unless you have already established a process for conservatorship. So if your child is going to need conservatorship, you need to have like determined that and be ready to take on that process so that you're not retroactively like trying to deal with that experience as they're also maybe leaving school and taking on new experiences and jobs and volunteering and like one at a time, right? And student consent is required. So in some form, the student is going to be involved in their IEP process and their ITP process, and that when they turn 18, their consent, the process will be required. All right. Now, how can we really help our children through this process of becoming an adult, right? How can we help them with adulting? The first thing that I think is most important, like if I were to give you a checkbox list, is to understand appropriate legal options. So like we just talked about, if your child is going to be under conservatorship, you want to know that well in advance. You want to understand what degree track your child is on well in advance. You want to understand the different options that are available to them. And the best way to do that is by participating in as much of the transition process as you can, that you are paying attention when you are getting notifications of your IEP meetings, and that yourself or an advocate for your child, or that you can participate over the phone or Zoom, that you're participating in the IEP and 504 process. And so encouraging and fostering self-advocacy, right? This is like the thing outside of going to meetings, what can we really do in our everyday life? We can encourage our children to become adults. And ways that we can do this are through building their skills of independence, both inside of your home and outside of your home. Things that you can do are encouraging them to do chores, right? Setting up structures of accountability. Like even if you say, my child is not capable of doing chores. How about setting your child on a schedule so that they're expected to wake up at the same time every day, right? Having some different standard of accessibility is accountability is important, right? We talked about, we have lots of different lots of different children that are functioning at all different levels. So chores at home might not be an option, but setting up some kind of standard of accountability and some kind of structure for them to work within is important, especially as we talk about the structures that are embedded in high school going away. The one pager and also developing a personal information file with disability related information. So having a folder with their name on it and sticking all the disability files in there, right? That's like, sometimes people come to my office with a stack this big and they apologize. They're like, I'm so sorry I brought this all to you. But I don't want people to ever apologize because I can go through it. That is my job, to go through it. It's way better to come with a stack than to not come with anything at all, right? And your student should print out their IEP. It might have been emailed to you, but they should print it out, and there should be a copy in their closet somewhere for the rest of forever that they can pull out to get services in college, get services in the workplace, get services when they take an exam later on in life in the workplace. So there's lots of important reasons to keep documents, right? And these are the documents that you need to keep. You need to keep the IEP. And just another level of accountability and like building that file with your student, helping your child understand why those forms are important, right? You know, how many kids that come to my office say, well, my mom has it somewhere. Well, you could have it too. Mom should still have it somewhere. Please also keep a copy. Okay, yeah, I think I'm good. Really just empowering our children who are becoming adults to understand the undertaking of adulthood. And they can't do that if they're not deeply understanding of themselves and their needs.
Right. And again, I think what I love about this is it really is looking at our children again through that strength-based lens. It is very easy to look at what our children's struggles are sometimes, right? And to focus on that. But it's just as, you know, and as important as that is to recognize what support they might need, it's also just as important to look at what their strengths and capabilities are, right? And so, so you're right. I mean, just thinking about what can they do? So I love that. Okay. Oh, and practicing financial
Oh
management.
yeah, I think one other thing is going to come up. Oh, practice point of contact is a really important one, especially now when including myself, nobody wants to answer their phone. You have to call people and you have to make appointments and you have to speak for yourself on the phone as an adult. And that's something that as students, especially the age of students we have coming through right now, deeply, deeply struggle with. So practicing making phone calls, making their own doctor's appointments or dentist appointments, making their own disability service appointments, even if you sit there on speakerphone or you write a script beforehand or you do it together, being your own point of contact is a very, very important skill. Sorry, I'm very passionate about that one.
And you're right. You're absolutely right. Okay, I'm trying to get to the next slide here. Why is it not going? There we go. I don't know what happened. Oh, there. All right, we're gonna get to watch this fun video now. Oh no, did it not work?
Learning. This is an example of a way that a student can become involved in their IEP. So what we're going to see is that the student is going to go through these bullet points and kind of introduce themselves, explain their current setting, and also some of their like strengths and positives, some of their hobbies, experiences.
Well, or we may not, because I tested this and it worked fine in
What happens if
Google
you press the
Drive.
space bar?
What's that?
Push the
Press the
share
space.
audio.
Share audio. Well, the video itself is not playing. It's the problem. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's okay. Well,
But I would say, like, at the very least, at the very minimum, Your
Mhm.
child should find a way to introduce themselves at their IEP. That might not be verbal, like we are talking earlier. We do have students that are nonverbal. Even those students need to find a way to communicate who they are. So having some way to introduce yourself at your IEP, I would say, is like the most basic standard that we can achieve.
Yes.
And this video showed the student talking and saying exactly what's on that screen. And she just narrated herself.
Well, I apologize, everyone. So we're going to move to certificate of completion.
Okay. So what is the certificate of completion? This can be confusing for some. First of all, I want to make it very clear that a certificate of completion is not the same as a high school diploma. Often it's referred to a non-diploma track student. So how do you determine if a student is going a certificate completion route or a high school diploma? That is definitely an IEP team decision. So this will be discussed prior to your student being switched from diploma to certificate of completion. This will be a discussion that will be in your IEP meeting, all right? And typically the reasons why a student would go to a certificate of completion track is because they're not able to access like grade level standards, or they're not able to meet the high school diploma requirements. The difference with a certificate of completion, the student's eligible still to receive free and appropriate public education, FAPE, post-secondary, which means that the student is eligible to receive those services at the adult transition program from the ages of 18 to 22. So after they graduate high school, and when I say graduate, they go through the ceremony, they wear the cap and gown, they walk across the stage, but that doesn't mean they have a high school diploma. That's the ceremony for their certificate of completion. After that, they have the option, if they choose, to go to the next post-secondary program. For Clovis Unified, that is the adult transition program, which is over at the Clovis Adult School. And they have the option of going there until they're 22 years. Once they turn 22, that semester, end of semester, they will age out. Yes.
Real quick, and I'm sorry I don't have a better way to do this, but I want to go back really quick. So everyone forgive me because I want to go back to this visual and I want to show everyone where we broke off at, okay? Um hold on. Wait, there we go. Okay. So we talked about we're right here, okay? So your student has completed 4 years of school. Oh, and again, it says 18 to 22. They could be 17 if they're, if they completed school at 17, right? But they've completed their 4 years of school. So look right here where we are. Um, if if a student did not get their high school diploma, we're going this way. We're on the yellow. Okay, so we're on the certificate of completion. All right. So I just wanted, I think this is that point where um, some families, it's very easy to get confused. Um, the other track is we're talking the blue track, which we'll get to after this, which is what happens if you do get your high school diploma, right? Because those things are different. Well, I'm going to confuse you a little bit more too, because I want you to look at that red asterisk right there down here, there's another disclaimer that there is a in California, we have the alternate pathway to a diploma. So Shannon's going to get to that too, but it does get a little muddled. But I did want you guys to have this visual of what we're talking about now. Okay, so we're going to the left on certificate of completion. Okay, so
And one thing about, I want everyone to understand this, is that if your student is on the track of certificate of a completion, Clovis Unified or school districts have to provide education for them from 18 to 22, but they are not legally obligated to attend school from 18 to 22. So that's the big difference that parents are like, what? My student, they don't have to go? No, they don't. You don't get the phone calls if they're not at school. It's very different. Uh, and if sometimes we have students that don't want to go to the adult transition program and they choose to go to a community college, which you can go without a high school diploma, believe it or not.
Sure.
And so
Right.
that's an option. One thing, though, I know that parents sometimes say they want to maybe go to a program through CVRC. CVRC will not cover that until they're 22 because the school does provide it till they're 22. So just keep that in mind, that
Mhm.
your options for like day programs and stuff like that are not there until they're 22.
Mhm. Great. Thank you.
Okay, you could just, yeah, just play it all. There you go.
Okay.
So at Clovis Adult, we have the Adult Transition Program, and this provides continued education for students, like I said earlier, that are ages 18 to 22 years of age. This is a very interesting transition for both the student and the parent. Students love it. It's very different from high school. It's not the standard you sit in a classroom and you go from class to subject to subject. We are learning transition skills, and the 4 different domains that we focus on are self-advocacy, and that looks different for everyone. That could be, you know, talking to other people. That could be learning how to make a phone call. It could be so many different things. Daily living skills or independent living. That's a very broad area. Community access, which is a huge focus. They are out in the community every single day. So this can look as going to a work site or going to the store or going to the library or learning how to go to a restaurant and order or going grocery shopping. So many different things, all things that we do in our daily lives that a lot of our students haven't participated in or don't really know how to do independently. They always just tag along with mom and dad. And it's really neat for them to be pushed and on their own, with supervision, of course, to learn those skills and understand what their community is all about. And then we also have vocational, and that is where we focus on work. And that is different for everyone. Some vocational skills are going to be done in the classroom. Some students will actually go to a work site and practice those skills. It just looks different for every student.
So Shannon, does every school district have, or I shouldn't say school district, every
SELPA?
LEA, SELPA, right? Do all
Mhm.
do all of them have an ATP program? Like, is that a requirement to provide
It is
those
a
services?
requirement for them to have access to an ATP program, but it's not
Mhm.
always necessarily their district. It might be the county. For instance, Fresno Unified, well, we actually used to, Clovis Unified a long time ago, didn't have an ATP program. I was one of the first teachers that started the ATP
Oh.
program back in 2006. Before that, all of our students went to Fresno County, but still had access and still were legally obligated to have some kind of adult transition program provided for them through either the city or the district.
Okay, so it's that access we're talking about. So that could be
Yes.
different
Mhm.
if they're not in Clovis Unified. Um, and one other question too is when you mentioned, they're adults and they have a choice to attend or not. Um, and again, this ATP, Adult Transition Program, is just one option, right? There are other
Mhm.
options they could do.
Mhm.
They could work, they could stay home, they could, go to college
Mhm.
again.
Mhm.
But what if they're conserved? Does and I don't want to get too legal, right? Because at the end, parents hang with me because I have a great resource I'm going to give you that will help that helps clarify
Mhm.
a lot of different options
Mhm.
that are available and conservatorship and power of attorneys and all those different things that we are not attorneys, right? But that being said, do you know, Shannon, offhand? Because I'm sure you have students that are conserved and some that
Mhm.
are not.
Yeah. So
How
if
does
a
it work?
student if a student is conserved, there are different kinds of conservatorships. So there's full conservatorship, which means the parent has full legal authority to make all decisions for the student, and that is pretty much like they're a minor. Okay,
Mhm.
it's the same thing. There's also some where it's just a limited conservatorship. So it might be they only have legal conservatorship over their education decisions or their medical decisions or their financial decisions. So it all depends on what the actual document says, the legal document, which needs to be presented to the school before the school can even consider following it too. That's another huge thing.
Get back to this now. Um, resume the slideshow. Okay, can you all see that now again?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes.
Okay, so this is some examples of what ATB does, partnering with different community programs to develop the vocational skills. Some of the work sites at ATP we use are trying to strengthen those students' vocational skills. And so they are able to gain that work experience at one of the many community agencies that we partner with. Some of them are actually in Clovis Unified. So we have Clovis Unified Technology. We have students go and do some volunteer or actually even paid work experience there. With our COSD custodial department, we have CVS, Joann's Fabric, Easy Errands, Vaughn's, CrossFit Gym, CUSD Transportation, the Yard, Plant Operations. In fact, we had a student that was really excited, did a work experience with TPP through the CUSD custodial department. This is a student without a diploma, mind you. Okay, this is a certificate of completion. And he was able to get hired on and is currently a custodian at Gateway. So it's really exciting to see that transition of them coming, having no work experience, doing some work experience, turning into a job. There's a Cracked Mug is a bistro that we have on campus. This was started many years ago and it's still going. And we have students making the coffees and lattes and then delivering it to various places all over Clovis Unified district offices. It's really neat. And then Building Bridges Print Shop, they learn how to make copies, ATP mail carrier, and then recycling. And there's others. And this changes yearly. And some are added, some are taken away, but lots of different work sites that ATP focuses on to get those work skills instilled in our students and to hopefully eventually someday they could get a job permanently. Okay, some other things to consider are, what if a student doesn't want to continue education post high school? This happens, and this is hard for parents because they don't want their students staying at home doing nothing. So if a student doesn't want to go, they can do a couple different things. They can enroll in enrichment courses training, like carpentry or beauty school, one of those programs, or they can seek out assistance from different community agencies. So this is one of the things I love because I do, and I'm the teacher on special assignment over the Transition Partnership Program. So Transition Partnership Program is, if you think of a bridge between Department of Rehab and Clovis Unified, TPP is the bridge that connects those two. So what we do is we go to the high schools when your son or daughter is a junior or senior, and we start connecting with that student. We work with them once to twice a month, working on those employment skills. But the really cool thing about TPP is for those students that are in ATP, they will go to ATP, we'll continue to work with them. But let's say your student gets a high school diploma, and this is what's really scary. And I think I saw a question in one of our question and answers regarding this about employment. What am I going to do? My son's going to be graduating in June and he doesn't know how to work. He doesn't have a job. TPP continues to provide services for the student, even if they graduate with a diploma until they're 22. So think about that. So your son graduates, exits high school with a diploma. We still provide those services through Clovis Unified until they're 22 or successfully employed. So that's a really great service too. I know we're talking about ATP, but I just wanted to do that little plug. SSI is another one. So if your son or daughter is currently receiving SSI services, when they turn 18, they're going to have to reapply on their own. All right. So of course you can help them, but you have to reapply when they turn 18 to continue to receive those SSI services. Also, it changes. You're going to have to show, before you were the person that got the money and decided what to do with the money for your son or daughter. Now it's your son or daughter. And so there's more stipulations on how to spend that money, and you have to keep track of it a little bit differently. I'm not going to go into that right now because that's a whole additional
Yeah, that's a
night.
whole webinar on its own.
Workforce Connection and California Conservation Corps. California Conservation Corps is great. I've had tons of students that I have helped get placed there, and it is a job. It's a program that a year program that they're in. They get paid full-time working, and they're outside. They're helping fight fires, and not actually fighting the fires, but helping get all the resources together. There's even an option that if you don't want to live in Fresno, you can actually go into another city and all over California, and they'll pay for your room and your board and also pay you an income. So that's a really great program. It's great on a resume, and it just really, you see such a huge growth in students over that year. That's another one. College Careers is another program at Fresno City that is great for our students. Some different recreational and activities and leisure activities that your student can do is break the barriers. Or they can do Special Olympics. You don't have to be part of school to do either of those. Join your local gym. Access community transportation by using the Roundup, City Bus, or Handy Ride. Recreational league sports that are designed for individuals with disabilities. So there's lots of different things that you can do if you don't want to go to ATP. But one thing to remember is you are eligible till you're 22 if you are a certificate of completion student. Let's say your student goes, and this happens all the time. No, I'm going to go and try this. I'm going to go get a job. And then first semester after they graduate, nothing's happened. They're still at home. And then about, November, December, January, they call us. Okay, we want to come back to school. The good thing is you could come and go at any point. You don't have to decide right then. If you don't start school in September, you can, or August, you can come anytime throughout the year, leave, come back. By law, we have to accept you until you're 22 or get a high school diploma.
Mhm. That's great information. Let me ask you this, Shannon, because I know, again, this is a lot of information,
I
everyone,
know.
right? How, let's say, a student is in, let's say they're 15 or 16, right? How do families figure out about these programs and what their child's eligible for? Do they talk to their IEP team?
Yes,
Mhm.
that's the hard thing, and the thing that people struggle with. I know that with me, I go out to all the high schools, and I go into every single high school, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. If you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and your son or daughter is on the ACE track or the high school diploma track and have an IEP, they're going to hear me. I've
Okay.
been in their class, and all their teachers should know about it. We offer workability through, and we also offer TPP. These are optional. The TPP is an optional service. You don't have to do it, and not all students qualify for it either. They may not be ready to work yet. So it really depends. I would say reach out to the case managers and ask them, reach out to me. Call me,
Right.
email me
Shannon, we had a
directly.
question. What
Yeah.
does ACE track stand for?
Oh, thank you. ACE is a modified diploma for students that are still they're going to get a high school diploma, but they are going to be on a track for like Clovis Community. They're not going to be able to go to Fresno State or any of the state colleges. It's
Well,
not
not straight to a,
right. They would have to
okay,
do 2 years of community, and then they could transfer still. Yeah.
right. Um, and what about you, Kelly? What about community colleges? How do families find out about, what's available that way? Do you guys come into the high schools as well?
So we do have a counselor that is assigned. It's called TTC, Transition to College, and we have one counselor assigned to the Clovis Unified High Schools. She typically goes in their senior year one time in the fall and one time in the spring. The first time is to enroll them in our program or make them eligible for our program. So explicitly notating that you would like records released to the college as a part of your process. If you know you're going to the college, make sure you let your high school know it's okay to give the college my IEP or my 504 plan if that's what you're comfortable with. Because if you don't meet with this counselor in high school when they're there at the high school and they can view your documentation. If you don't give them access to the documentation, you will have to bring it in either in person or send us a scanned copy. So it really is best to, if you know you're coming to community college, get involved with our transition to college program while you're still in high school, right? When it's coming to the student rather than the student coming to come to.
And how do families
And
know about that? I guess that's maybe for either one of you. I mean, as a
yeah,
mom, how do I know this counselor's coming to, campus? Because, God bless our children, we may not get that information, right?
very true. Yes. So it's usually sent through email, but that doesn't always happen to either. One
Mhm.
of the things I was going to answer that question as well is when your son or daughter is a senior, they should, every single one of them should have a transition IEP the spring of their senior year.
Okay.
And at that, the ATP teacher, if they are non-diploma track, should attend that IEP meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Now, teachers should know this and this should be done. But as a parent, I would make sure that that is happening and also make sure that the ATP teacher was invited to that.
Mhm.
Okay. It's gotten a lot better now. We're pretty much on track of everyone having those transition IEP meetings and everything. And the reason why that's so important is because the ATP teachers have a lot of knowledge in those extra programs after high school because they're dealing with it on a daily basis. So they are going to have a lot of information for programs, alternative programs, what they can do while they're at ATP, or if they don't want to go to ATP, what are some other options? That's a great meeting for them to get that information. But what I also said is, please, I mean, that's my job. That's what I do. That's part of it is helping with that transition portion. So if you have any questions about programs or you don't know what to do or questions about TPP, contact me directly. You don't have to go through your case manager. You could contact me directly.
And that would be for students that are both certificate of
Either,
completion track
either,
and high school diploma track,
both.
right?
Both.
You're the girl. Got
Mhm.
it. Thank you. All right. Oh, so much information. Thank you all you participants for hanging with us. All right. Now if I can just get the slide to change. I'm trying. There we go.
So how can families help? Well, of course, attend school at the adult transition program. Encourage your student to attend. I know that sometimes parents are like, no, they're not going to go there, or the student goes, I don't want to go there. Give it a try. Go for a week. If you don't like it, you don't have to keep going. See what they can offer you. We've had students come and get for the full 4 years. And then we've had students come and they got 2 or 3 months. They got those skills that they needed, got a job and left. And we never saw them again, which is great. They're independent now. So it's different for every student. Try it out. Just encourage them to try it out. All right. If they don't like it, they don't have to keep going. Talk to them about their future encourage abilities. So it's really important just to keep that conversation going with your student, help them start thinking, what do you want to do? What do you want to do next week? Okay, what do you want to do next month? Then graduate to what do you want to do next semester? What do you want to do when you're done with high school? Those questions, have them start thinking about it so it's not a surprise when it happens. And then work experience is really important too. I know this is really difficult during the high school years, especially for our diploma track students, because that's a lot on the plate to do that and then work experience. So this is where if you have a student that maybe is not going to go into college, they're going to get their high school diploma, but they're not going to go to college afterwards. You want them to work. get them hooked up with TPP because we will help assist them after high school, even more so. We'll help them get that work experience. We could provide paid work experience. We could help them with those applications, applying, doing resumes, all of that after they're done with high school as well. So it's really important. Another
And
thing that, did you
oh,
have a
I'm
question?
sorry. I just want to say too, and parents keep in mind work experience doesn't even have to be paid work experience.
Exactly.
Volunteering is a great way for kiddos to one learn to
Mhm.
contribute to the community, right? But also to get their feet wet and get to try out different things. So
Mhm.
maybe they want to, try childcare and they volunteer, babysitting in the nursery or anyway, think about that.
Yeah.
Lots of agencies love to have volunteers.
Yep. Another thing that's a really good thing to get when your student is before they graduate is their California ID. All right. A lot of our students are not going to get their driver's license. That's fine, but they do need their California ID and they're going to need their social security card. And this happens all the time. It gets lost. After 18 years, things get shuffled around and you don't have it. And they need it because you can't get a job and get paid for a job unless you have both those things. So social security card and California ID are really important. That's another thing that if your student is a non-diploma, which means their certificate of completion, if they go to a ATP, that's something that they actually work on, is getting those things. They can help them get those two things as well. But I encourage parents to get that before in high school would be better. And then build connections with community agencies. We've talked about this already. Department of Rehab and TPP, which is they're together, CVRC, lots of different agencies. I'm not going to say them all again, but start building those connections, getting your students interested in it and familiar with them.
All right, so we're going to turn this over to Kelly as we
And
talk about. So remember, we're blue. Now we're talking high school diploma track, okay?
all right, so the high school diploma is the initial goal of all students who are enrolled in our K through 12 system. We're always trying to achieve high school diploma. That is our standard, right? And so what does it mean to achieve high school diploma? It means to have the necessary credits and to have met the course requirements and competency standards that are set by our state. It may be a requirement for a person to have a high school diploma for some types of employment, I'd say for many types of employment. And it may make you eligible for higher education leading to earning a degree. And remember, it was said earlier that community college is an open enrollment institution. So we accept 100% of the students that apply to our community colleges. You do not need to have a high school diploma to enroll in community college. And so what is going to happen after our students receive the traditional high school diploma? They're going to exit the special education system unless they're enrolling in some kind of alternative pathway. And after they've achieved the high school diploma, we're talking like they've had final IEP, they are eligible to, hopefully they've already maybe had some unemployment at one point, but they can obtain employment, they can enroll in college, they can enroll in vocational school, they can enroll in the military. That is an important one that goes back to that age of majority, right, at 18. They might have opportunities for apprenticeship. Really, their opportunities are endless, and that's what we need to remind our students as we're doing this strength-based exploration, right? Trying different things, volunteering different places so that they can understand truly they can do anything that they're interested in.
Okay, well, we're just gonna skip this because
Yeah.
I know it's not going to play. So I apologize.
Okay, and so I know there's a lot of words on the slide, and there are a lot of differences between high school and college. They are very different education systems, and I really like the way that this first part is stated. Their main difference in our disability services is this wraparound special education model versus a reasonable accommodation model. So there's an IEP team in high school that's going to have your teacher and your full, like someone from your assessment team, as well as someone from your administration that are looking at your student from all these different angles throughout the day, 5 days a week, and they're going to determine both appropriate placement and services for that person. I added in here, it's like one-stop shopping, right? Most of the services are embedded into the K through 12 system. In our college system, that is not the case. So the student must first initiate the process, right? If they're still in college and they're working with, or high school and they're working with transition to college, that might be a little different, but for the most part, students have to seek our disability services. They need to apply for the services. There's an application at every disability service office in every college in the country, and they're all different. So at every college they go to, they're going to fill out an application. And then we do not use the term IEP. We accept your IEP as a form of documentation, which is why it's important that you hold on to it. And then we read the IEP, and what we have are Title V standardized services. So there are services that the community college system is required to provide to persons with disabilities that are eligible. And so we'll look at your IEP, and then we'll look at these college services and say, okay, this is what we're able to provide. And in that process, we call it the interactive process, because we base it not just on this document, but also through an interview process with the student. So if your student cannot explain why they need the accommodation or the service, they might not get the service. They need to be able to advocate and articulate how their services impact their educational experience, which is a pretty steep ask, which is why it's important that we do this prep work, these one-pagers. Like maybe we have already talked about what college looks like and what all those accommodations are and what they are similar to on the IEP, right? It's a web, and we have to weave it together before they graduate with this high school diploma. Let's see, resources, groups. So our financial aid, our food pantry services, our services for parents, our services, our welcome center, our disability services, our tutoring are all in different places across campus. And some of those programs even have different applications. And so it's going to be on our adult students to enroll in all these different programs rather than those programs coming to them through the teacher. The teacher is not typically involved in the student support programs. Documentation. So when we talk about documentation and proof of disability, we're talking about IEP or 504 plan. We would like you to bring your documentation from high school to us. If I don't know how you would have gotten into this webinar, but if your child has not been identified through the educational process and they have some kind of medical diagnosis that's not been documented, you would bring your medical information. So a letter from a doctor, or we even have a form you can fill out. And then so we also can sometimes serve a larger population than is typically served by the IEP process. Students who have diabetes and may need breaks during exams that they didn't traditionally need in the K through 12 setting might be more eligible for our college services.
Really?
Yeah.
One of the things that parents hear a lot, and I see down here, we're under civil rights law, that the section 504. So we know, as we talked about, when a student gets their high school diploma, special education ends, right? But in college, does is a 504 plan applicable? Does that stay with them?
So all of their plans end. If you have a plan with Department of Rehab that is related to your future employment, that plan would stick with you, right? But we do not use any educational plans for anything other than eligibility from outside programs. So we use it, we look at the 504, we say, this is the diagnosis. They have been served through this educational system. They are eligible for our program. But then we engage in this interview to decide what the services are.
Got it. Thank you.
And then this is an important one. Cost of evaluation becomes your responsibility when you leave the K through 12 system. So if your student is in need of assessment, that will have to be done through your medical provider, through your insurance, or through CVRC possibly, but it will not be done at the community college. We do provide learning disability assessment, but this is not for people who have diagnosis. Learning disability assessment is provided statewide at the community college level. And so you might see that and think like, oh, they're giving assessments. My student should get that assessment. But those are for people that have not been assessed as a way to become eligible for the program. So if your student has received IEP or 504 services, they will be eligible for disability services in college. You just need to provide proof. I think we'll skip the law part. We're governed by law, but it is different law, so it is important to know the differences. I'll leave it there.
Okay.
And then I just want to touch briefly on what is available locally through our community college system. So we are a 5-college system. We have Fresno City College is in this first picture. We have Reedley College in the second. The third here is where I work at Clovis Community College. And then here next, this beautiful building that I love is the Madera campus. And then there's an Oakhurst Center that is part of the Madera campus. So if you use disability services through the Oakhurst Center, your counselor is Tracy from Madera. So that's something to keep in mind. But you can enroll, this is called the State Center Community College District, and you can enroll in Fresno City and use both the disability services and take classes at Clovis Community College. So we share a program management system. We're in communication as counselors, and you can take classes at all colleges simultaneously or one at a time. Fresno City is notorious for having good non-credit developmental skills classes for our students with disabilities.
Great. So back to looking at this through a parent lens, when the colleges come and meet with our student that senior year, right, is even though they might be coming from Clovis community, that transition specialist, when they sign up, they really could choose classes from any of these?
Yes.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Okay.
We use an online portal. So when they log in through their online portal, let's say they did their first appointment at Clovis College, and then in the spring, they were like, oh, I really want these classes over at Fresno City College. They would just get on their online portal and request those services.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. So can you see this slide, Kelly?
Oh, yes. Is this one for me?
Yep,
Sorry.
it is for you, friend.
I knew I would miss one. So I like these, how can family help? So what can we actually do? So do your research, go physically to these campuses. Don't have the first time your student goes to campus be the first day of class. You're welcome to come to our colleges and just walk around and be familiar with the buildings, to meet our disability service staff. And if community college is not necessarily the option or the route that you're planning, to check out other employment training programs, to be working closely with Department of Rehab, so that your student just has a lot of options, right? Because everyone can work and everyone deserves the opportunity to work. It's how, as American people, we feel value in our society. So to explaining that to your kid also, right? Talk about their future and encourage their abilities. Everyone can work and they can too, whether it be through the school system and coming out on the end of that, that's going to lead to work also, right? It might be 4 years down the road or 5 years down the road. We want to be working at the same time, maybe. Encourage your student to volunteer or obtain part-time or seasonal employment, right? You don't know if you like a job until you do a job. So it's really important that we have jobs and be a part of implementing the ITP. So even if you can't attend the meeting day of, I understand like people get busy and things happen, your car breaks down, like to know your kid, to be familiar with the resources that are available to them, and to both advocate for them and model advocacy so that they can advocate for themselves.
So Kelly, explain maybe a little bit to me how, if are there only academic classes available at the community colleges? Like, for instance, say your child does want to try college, right? But the thought of that leap to academic classes are a little overwhelming, okay?
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
maybe that's not maybe quite in their skill set yet, okay? Are there classes that are per se non-academic?
There are classes that are, yes, yeah,
Like,
there
are
are
there
classes
dance
also that are
classes?
less academic. Yes,
Right,
absolutely.
photography,
There's
right.
dance and yoga and different kinds of art. We just opened a like, oh, what is it called? An applied technology career technical education building on our campus. And this building is full of robots and different computers and rocks and plants and like all kinds of different technical things that you wouldn't necessarily expect like in
Uh,
traditional class in a lecture hall or something like
mhm,
that. So community college really is a place where we're thinking about students who are hands-on learners. But yes, we do have some like less academic classes in the arts and in the
mhm.
physical education also. We do not have it at Clovis College, but there is adaptive PE at some of the city colleges.
Oh,
Kelly,
great.
do you guys still have the College to Careers at Fresno City?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
that's another one.
And if you're looking for like low stakes, high reward, I would say you look at the non-credit classes, right? So something that maybe is just pass, no pass. So we're not looking at a grade. And also non-credit is typically free to the student. So they can
Oh,
just try it out, and like attendance is like, if that's something they need to work on, they're working on that, or like it's more skill-based sometimes.
wonderful. And Shannon, what about adult school? Clovis Adult School, how
Yeah.
they offer, like it's, oh my goodness, I was gonna say floral, but that's not what I meant. But I mean,
They
they
used
offer,
to have a floral department. They
yes,
used
they
to.
did.
They have a lot of extracurricular classes. They have dancing, cooking, pottery, exercise, all kinds of different classes. There's also for those students that possibly maybe didn't get their high school diploma, but were close. They would continue their education at Clovis Adult School and they could go the high school diploma route and complete their high school diploma at Clovis Adult if they qualify.
So would that be part of the ATP program?
No,
It,
separate,
no,
completely
separate.
separate. Yeah. So what would happen is, this happens a lot. We have
Mhm,
students that come over with an IEP and we would have an IEP, a meeting to discuss which route is appropriate. Typically, if they were on a non-diploma track in high school, they're going to do the ATP program. But let's
mhm,
say they were on the ACE, the alternative high school diploma or high school diploma and just didn't finish their credits or
mhm.
what something happened
They
and they
just
just
need a
didn't.
little more time,
Yeah,
right? Uh-huh.
they can go and take the entrance exam, and if they get a certain score, they can continue their education at close adult. And the good thing I like about that is I have noticed that a lot of students that struggled with the rigor of high school, you have what, 6, 7 classes. That's a lot
Mhm.
for students. You can go one or two classes at a time, and I've seen the such a huge success rate for those students that were unable to get their high school diploma in high school excel when they get to Clovis Adult School because they're able to do it one at a time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too. When it comes to our classes, sometimes when students come in for the first time freshman experience, they get loaded up with a whole set of classes. It's like math and English and geography, and they have to go to lots of different buildings, and the classes are only 2 days a week. So it's a lot of changes, and I really do recommend like just dip your toe in, just try one class or 2 classes at a time. So also you can practice using your new resources like the tutoring center and the library.
Yep.
Great tips. All right. Well, this was a video again that we can't watch. I apologize, everyone.
Dalton.
I know, darn it. But okay, so we are wrapping up. It is 8 o'clock, and we will get to questions too in a minute. But what I want to show you guys is this Connections California. So I'm a part of a Family Resource Center network of California, and one of my sister agencies, Parents Helping Parents in San Jose, they developed several years ago this amazing statewide resource for families called Connections California, and it is all about transition to adulthood. And I put a little screenshot in here. This right here is the actual link. Um, and I hope that still works in the PDF that I downloaded for you. But if not, all you have to do is Google Connections California and it will pop up. They have e-learning, which is, videos in multiple languages, CalAble accounts, conservatorships, I mean, pages and pages of valuable resources for families to access, all for free. Okay, so please do not miss that resource. I cannot recommend it enough. These are just some other things to keep in mind. I won't go into them right now, but these are a lot of the agencies that Shannon and Kelly mentioned. And so, again, there are some resources in the drive as well. These are some other resources. The one I wanted to really point out is resources for independence, Central Valley. Ages 14 and up, families can get connected with them. And again, I'm telling you, they are a valuable resource to help young adults be as independent as possible. And so they have lots of expertise and lots of resources, and it is free. And feel free to check that out. Tell them Leanne sent you. I will get you a discount on their free services. That's all the power I have, right? So, okay, we're done. If you are all finished, then, goodbye. Thank you for coming. Please don't forget to complete your survey. But I know we have some questions that we are going to tackle now. So if you want to stay on for that, please do. Okay.
So one of the questions Ryan asked was, what's the Connections resource to Google again? I'll put the link in right now.
Thank you. Yes, Connections California. And so, and thank you, Kelly and Shannon. I know you're answering some questions as we went along. It's hard to keep up, but again, I know there's all these acronyms that get thrown out. I hope that you all feel comfortable to reach out to us, and if you have specific questions, again, we're all here for you. We know this is a lot of information to take in one night. Okay, we don't expect you to become experts tonight on it, but what I really hope is that it gets you thinking. It gets you thinking about what do you need to do and what kind of questions do you need to ask out there. Again, one of the things that I tell families too, you may need to consult a lawyer, right? If you've got things like conservatorship to, think about. You can also check with paralegals. I know lots of families that will use a paralegal to help save money. But again, check out that Connections California resource, please, because it's such important information for all of you. Ryan, yes, you have our contacts in the PowerPoint. Okay, so that will all be in the drive. You have my email in particular because it came with your Zoom link. So if you need Shannon or Kelly's email and you for some reason can't access the PowerPoint, just email me and I'll get you connected with these ladies. So girls, do you see a
I
question
think
that
we tag teamed
You
it. Good
did
job,
good,
Kelly.
yeah.
High five, everyone. Good job. Well, again, thank you for everything. I appreciate you, Shannon and Kelly, spending your evening with us. Again, it's such an important topic that I want families to feel like they're getting a base of knowledge to start building on, okay? So
Absolutely.
thank
It's
you
our
for
pleasure.
spending your time with us.
Thank you, Leanne.
Oh, wait, there's 2 new messages. Wait.
Okay.
Oh, there's just thank yous.
Okay. All right. All right, everyone. We'll have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.